Okay, so imagine this. You walk into your therapist's office expecting, I don't know, like a calming atmosphere, right? Maybe like a Zen garden or something.
Some soft music.
Yeah, exactly. And instead, bam, you're hit with like a giant portrait of Lenin and
Whoa.
another one and another one.
Wow.
Turns out that's what you'd find in Jordan Peterson's house. Walls and walls of Soviet-era propaganda.
Huh. That's wild.
It kind of makes you wonder, right? Like, what could a psychologist who collects Soviet art possibly have to say about, like, living a good life?
It's definitely a head scratcher. But that's the thing about Jordan Peterson, he always keeps you guessing. And that's actually what we're diving into today. His book, 12 Rules for Life.
Oh, yeah, this is going to be good.
Yeah, so you sent us some excerpts, and just reading through them, it's amazing. It's like he's combined this deep understanding of the human psyche with ancient mythology, and then he's woven in these really personal stories.
Yeah, it's like a self-help book, but like on steroids.
Ugh.
It's philosophical, it's psychological, and honestly, sometimes it gets kind of dark.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that's what makes it so interesting.
Totally.
By the way, if you're enjoying this deep dive so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. We've got a ton of other mind-blowing content coming your way.
Definitely. Now, one of the first things that really stood out to me in 12 Rules for Life was Peterson's focus on, well, rules.
Makes sense, right?
Right. He uses this biblical story of the golden calf, when Moses is off doing his thing and the Israelites, they create this idol.
Oh, yeah, and then it all goes downhill from there.
Exactly. They basically descend into chaos. So Peterson suggests that this shows how much humans actually need structure, some kind of framework, or else we risk just giving in to our darker impulses.
It's like he's saying, hey, we've all got that potential for chaos inside us, but it's rules. It's order that keep us in check. It's what keeps society functioning.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how he connects this ancient story to what's going on in the world today. He sees this decline of traditional values and the rise of moral relativism, the idea that there's no absolute right or wrong, as like a slippery slope to that same kind of societal breakdown.
Yeah, speaking of traditional values, Peterson actually talks a lot about his upbringing in rural Alberta.
Yeah.
Where self-reliance and hard work were like the foundation of
Oh,
everything.
yeah, totally. And it seems like that experience really shaped his worldview.
Yeah,
This big emphasis on personal responsibility.
totally. It probably gave her this, like, deep sense of pragmatism. Like, he's not just interested in these abstract theories. He wants to understand how these ideas actually play out in the real world,
Mm-hmm.
in everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like he's saying, hey, look, life can be tough, but we have the power to choose how we respond. We can create order out of the chaos.
Which brings us back to those Soviet posters.
Yeah, that's right.
What's the deal with that?
It's not that Peterson's like a communist sympathizer or
No,
anything.
definitely not. He's actually very critical of totalitarian regimes.
Yeah, I know isn't.
Right. But he sees those regimes as like a cautionary tale.
Like a warning.
Exactly. Like a stark reminder of what can happen when these utopian ideals, these visions of a perfect society, are taken to the extreme.
Oh, I see.
The Soviet Union, the Holocaust. These are tragic examples of what happens when ideologies go wrong, when they cost human lives.
And this isn't just theoretical for him either. He has a personal connection to this history, especially through his wife's family who were directly affected by the Holocaust.
Yeah, it's true. And that adds this very real, very human dimension to his work,
Mhm.
It's not just some intellectual exercise, it's personal. And honestly, it's pretty courageous to confront these dark parts of history head on.
For sure. So we've got rules. We've got Order the Dangers of Utopia and, of course, those infamous Soviet posters. If you're feeling your brain start to tingle, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button for more thought-provoking deep dives like this one.
All right, so another big idea Peterson tackles is this whole concept of moral relativism, which we touched on earlier.
Right, like, is there a right and wrong?
Exactly. And he sees this as a real problem, especially for younger generations who haven't really been given a strong ethical framework.
It's like, if there's no objective right and wrong, how are we supposed to make decisions? Especially when it comes to these tough ethical dilemmas.
Exactly. Like, how do we teach our kids what's right and wrong?
Right.
And Peterson isn't afraid to use some pretty strong and some might say disturbing stories to make this point. Like the one about the kid on the playground who purposely stepped on his daughter's hands
Oh, my God.
just to provoke a reaction.
Oh, wow.
It's chilling, but it really makes you think, is that what happens when we lose sight of those core values, that sense of a shared morality?
That's a scary thought.
It is. It gets to the core of what Peterson is concerned about, this unchecked aggression. the potential for cruelty and chaos when we don't have a clear moral compass.
He's not saying we need to go back to some rigid authoritarian structure,
Yeah,
right?
no, not at all.
But it's more like rediscovering these timeless virtues, these principles that have guided humanity for centuries.
Exactly. It's about finding a balance. Recognizing that individual freedom is important, but we also need some shared understanding of what it means to be good to live a meaningful life together in society.
Okay, so we've got order rules, the dangers of utopian thinking, and now the problem of moral relativism. Up next, we're going to tackle dominance hierarchies and Peterson's somewhat controversial lobster analogy. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Okay, so you ready to dive into this lobster analogy?
Right, lay it on me. But lobsters,
Mm,
really?
yeah.
What do these, bottom feeders have to do with us?
Well, Peterson says that lobsters and humans have actually evolved with similar hierarchical structures. Think of a flock of chickens and that whole pecking order thing.
Yeah.
The dominant birds always get the best food first and all the good resources.
If chickens are chickens, are you saying that human society is just one big pecking order?
Not exactly. But Peterson suggests that we're wired with these similar instincts, like this drive for status and dominance. He even links serotonin, the neurochemical connected to mood and well-being, to social standing.
Hold on, so you're saying our place in the hierarchy, actually affects our brain chemistry?
That's the idea. The higher up you are, the more serotonin you have, so you're more confident and you have this sense of well-being. But lower status means less serotonin, which leads to more anxiety and feeling vulnerable.
Wow, that's kind of crazy. I mean, I know everyone has their ups and downs, but I think it could be tied to our place in the social pecking order. That's like a whole new way of looking at human behavior.
Right. And it gets at those deep evolutionary roots of these social dynamics. Peterson argues that hierarchies aren't just some made-up cultural thing. They're actually woven into our biology.
So we've got these hierarchies, this constant struggle for status. But Peterson also talks about chaos and order, right? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, he sees those as these fundamental forces in the universe and in our own lives, too. He says chaos is the unknown, the unpredictable, all the stuff we just can't control. And order is what's familiar, the structure, the things that make us feel safe and stable.
And I remember he uses that image of himself, clinging to a chandelier in this massive empty cathedral.
Oh, yeah, to describe the struggle.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful image. The cathedral represents that order, that tradition, something solid and lasting. But then the chandelier is barely hanging on, always threatening to fall into chaos.
So it's like he's saying that we need both, right? We need that structure and that feeling of order, but we also have to be able to adapt to change, to handle the unknown.
Exactly. Too much order can be stifling. It can make you rigid and stuck. Think of those totalitarian regimes we were talking about. But then too much chaos is terrifying. It's like being lost at sea without a compass.
So the key is to find that balance, right? That sweet spot between order and chaos.
That's the challenge, and it's something we face both personally and as a society. Now, speaking of challenges, Peterson doesn't shy away from the tough parts of life. He talks very openly about his own struggles with hardship, like losing his friend Chris.
Yeah, and he doesn't just dwell on it. He really stresses how important it is to face those difficult experiences head on, to take responsibility for our lives, even when things are really rough. He uses that phrase, clean up your room, which sounds so simple, but it actually has a much deeper meaning.
Yeah, it's a metaphor for starting with what you can control. Even something as small as making your bed or tidying your desk. It's about having that sense of agency, taking charge of your little space and then building from there.
So it's like creating little pockets of order in the middle of all that chaos.
Exactly. And from there, we can start to tackle the bigger challenges in our lives. So where do ideologies fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Peterson seems pretty wary of ideology in general, especially those big utopian visions.
It's like he's saying, don't just follow the crowd because it sounds nice or makes you feel good. Think for yourself, question the easy answers, and be open to different perspectives.
He sees ideology as this kind of shortcut, a way to simplify complicated issues without really understanding them. And those shortcuts, those oversimplifications, often have really bad consequences.
So it's like a warning against groupthink, right?
Yeah.
Becoming so stuck in your own ideology that you end up demonizing anyone who disagrees with you.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. He's all about intellectual humility, recognizing that none of us have all the answers. And this actually connects to another big idea, the importance of truth and knowing yourself.
Peterson seems to believe that being honest with ourselves and with others is essential for personal growth and for creating a more just and compassionate world.
He talks about the power of honest conversation, really listening to what others have to say, even if it's tough or makes you uncomfortable.
He even mentions this client who hated his wife.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And through talking, they uncover these deep-rooted problems that stemmed from the client's childhood.
It's a really powerful example of how speaking the truth, even when it hurts, can lead to serious self-awareness and ultimately healing.
So we've got honesty, self-awareness, facing our inner demons. It all sounds pretty heavy. Where's the hope in all of this?
The hope is in meaningful action. Peterson argues that true meaning isn't found in those fleeting pleasures or distractions. It's about going after what's truly valuable, even if it's hard.
Like in that story, The Insult That Made a Man Out of Mac.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
This guy completely changes himself through pure willpower and discipline after this humiliating experience.
Yeah, it's like a classic redemption story. Taking ownership of your life and choosing to make things better even when you're faced with adversity.
Instead of being a victim of your circumstances, you rise to the challenge and become the hero of your own story. And speaking of rising to the challenge, Peterson has some strong opinions about parenting, especially when it comes to discipline and responsibility.
He's a huge advocate for clear rules and boundaries for kids. Not to be controlling, but as a way to help them learn self-control and navigate the world.
He even shares that story about disciplining his own son,
Yeah.
showing that even those tough moments are super important for a child's development.
It's all about finding that balance between love and discipline, you know? Giving kids the structure they need to thrive, but also encouraging them to be independent and grow.
Wow, we've covered a lot.
Yeah.
Order and chaos, dominance hierarchies, confronting suffering, the dangers of ideology, the importance of truth, and even some parenting tips sprinkled in there. Is there anything else we need to hit before we wrap things up?
Actually, yeah. There's one last thing I think we should highlight, Peterson's idea of being a true seeker of enlightenment instead of claiming to have all the answers.
So it's not about reaching some perfect state of being.
Not at all. It seems like he's saying that true wisdom is all about continuous learning and growth, constantly questioning, exploring, and refining our understanding of the world. And that's a journey we're all on together.
Speaking of journeys, if you're digging this deep dive into Jordan Peterson's ideas, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more thought-provoking explorations. We've got a whole world of fascinating topics to uncover together. But for now, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with some final thoughts and takeaways from 12 Rules for Life. Okay, so we're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into Jordan Peterson. We've covered a lot. Dominance hierarchies, lobsters, cleaning our rooms, confronting chaos. What's your main takeaway from all this?
Well, what keeps coming back to me is this idea of personal responsibility. Peterson really hammers it home. Take responsibility for your life, your choices, your relationships, even your thoughts.
Yeah.
It's so easy to blame everything else,
Oh, wait.
the government, society, the system, whatever. But Peterson's like, nope, look inward first.
So before you go trying to change the world, you got to start with yourself.
Exactly. It's about realizing that even small changes, those little acts of responsibility can make a big difference. They can create positive change inside us and in the world around us.
It's like that saying, be the change you want to see.
Exactly. And I think that's a powerful message. We can't fix everything, but we can start by taking ownership of our own little piece of the world.
It makes me think about those Soviet posters in Peterson's house.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they're not about supporting the ideology, but more like a reminder of what can happen when we think we have all the answers when we try to force our will on everyone else.
It's like a warning against being too sure of yourself. The danger of thinking you're so right that you forget about the individual people who will end up getting hurt by some big utopian plan.
Ouch.
He's telling us to be humble, to remember that we're all flawed, we're all on a journey, and finding truth and meaning is a lifelong process.
So it's not about reaching some perfect state of enlightenment.
Nope. It's about always questioning, challenging yourself, being open to new ideas, and knowing that we never really arrive. It's the journey itself, the ups and downs, the good and bad that makes life meaningful.
So maybe those Soviet posters are there to remind us of just how complicated and messy the world really is.
Yeah, the constant push and pull between order and chaos, that's what makes us human.
Peterson doesn't give us a roadmap.
No.
There's no step-by-step guide to happiness or success.
Right.
But he gives us a way to think about things, a set of tools for dealing with the big questions, and a challenge to live a more meaningful life, a more responsible life.
Absolutely.
That's it for our deep dive into Jordan Peterson. We've just scratched the surface, but hopefully this has got you thinking, challenged some of your ideas, and maybe even inspired you to face your own chaos. And if you're looking for more intellectual adventures, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got a whole universe of ideas waiting to be explored. Until next time, keep searching, keep questioning, and keep cleaning your room.